Hey everybody, a massive welcome to the final Connect group of 2023. Here it is. Can you believe it? It is the last Connect group for the entire year. Next fortnight we'll be gathering and having Christmas parties, so we'll still be gathering together. This is our last content Connect group for the year. It wasn't our year for the rugby, but it was our year for Connect groups.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody.
Bit of heartbreak, but hey, we've done well.
Yeah, but for many in the church, it wasn't heartbreak. It was a heartwarming because South Africans were cheering.
There we go.
Shout out to South Africans. Come on, turn to your neighbour right now. Give them a high five and say, it's good to see you. Welcome to Connect Group. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name's Junior, and this is the amazing Jayden Bay, who is our campus pastor at our fielding location. And tonight we're going to be talking about the year in review. Yeah. Just summarising really what God has done across our church, in our community this year. Just taking some time to talk about it, reflect about it. I'm going to also invite our Connect groups tonight to do that as you break off in your discussion, reflect about what has God been doing in your heart. But we want to kind of provide a catalyst for that conversation by talking about what has God done in our community this year. Yeah. And this has been the year of faith, the year of trusting God. Yeah. And Jaden's going to speak to that really shortly. But Psalm 24 verse 6, I love this verse. Yep. It says, such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. What a banner for a generation. Yeah. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Jaden, can you speak to us? What do you think has been one of the major things God has been saying in our church, through our church, doing in our church in 2020?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Hey, totally love the thought, seeking his face. And as Junior mentioned, that's totally the journey we're on. And what I've loved and I've really enjoyed being a part of is seeing people becoming aware of perhaps a deeper level. Like we can seek God's face and we can pray once a week or come to church twice a month, and sometimes we can settle in that, and that's a danger. But it's really taking ownership of our own journey, our own desire to seek his face, becoming that heart ablaze and going deeper, deciding in ourselves, taking ownership of who we are. And I've seen that in multiple different ones throughout the year, and different leaders really pushing in and pursuing, taking ownership that, hey, perhaps I'm not where I want to be, and the answer to that is seeking his face.
That's so good. I love that. And I think sometimes the word deep or the word depth in the church, when people say that, what they really mean is like, I don't have enough Bible knowledge. Right. Or, it can almost come from like a self-righteous kind of posture. Yeah. But I think what you said is so good, because what God's been doing is he's been cultivating hearts to long for something deeper in the sense of God's presence. Yeah, totally. I think it's Habakkuk 2 says, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of his glory. Right. It's not the knowledge of, every T crossed I dot. It's like, man, there's this personal revelation, personal experience on the glory of the Lord. Yeah, the earth will be filled with it. And I think what you're saying is so true. We had these glory moments this year in prayer meetings, in our services, through prayer and fasting. Yes. Those 9 days at the start of the year, it was just like God's presence is here. And that's been, I think it was Duncan Campbell in the revivals of the Hebrides. He talked about, if you can get the fire of God in the heart of man, the human heart, the heart of the home, the heart of the church, and then the heart of the region. It creates a spiritual environment the devil can't tolerate and God can't resist. Yeah. And I think we've just been seeing the genesis of that this year. We're just getting started.
Totally, 100%.
Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And with, we talk about seeking his face and going deep. I think sometimes that can feel daunting. Like, where do I start, or what are the great things I need to attain to as a Christian? Yes. I mean, just one small example. We finished a series a couple of weeks back called Build Your Church, and one of the subjects in there was evangelism. And we heard a quote from Billy Graham that said the key to evangelism, he didn't list all these points, but he said the key to evangelism is praying and reading the Word. So good. And sometimes we talk about going deeper in our relationship with God, or wanting to do X, Y, Z, and we go, oh my goodness, where do I start? It starts with seeking his face, allowing that to drive us to our knees, get on our hands and feet and say, God, I need you. I'm seeking you, I'm pursuing you, and just praying and opening his Word.
So good. And I'm reminded of that story of the Moravians. There are these two boys, they met someone who was from an island of slaves, and he got released. And they met him and he said, if only there was someone who could share the gospel with my friends and family that are on this island.
Yes.
And the story goes, it was a few hundred years ago. These two Moravian boys sold themselves into slavery. The only way to get to the island was to be a slave. So they sold themselves into slavery so they could go to the island. They ended up sharing the gospel. Thousands of people were saved. But they were quoted this phrase, which you might be familiar with, as they were leaving, being sold into slavery, waving goodbye to their friends and family, potentially forever, saying, may the Lamb receive the reward for his suffering. Goodness. But it's like, man, they were so compelled by who God was.
Yeah, right.
That they were willing to place themselves. And so to your point, it's like they had a revelation on who God is through prayer and through the word and through a personal relationship, that they were like, how could we not do this? How could we not go beyond our comfort, our inconvenience? That's so compelled by the beauty of Jesus. And I just wonder, could you maybe share for us now to everyone, this is our last episode for the year. Coming into summer now, praise God. Coming into the new year, what is something you would really charge our community with, those that are in our Fielding location and our Palmers North location? What would you say?
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. If we're looking towards a holiday period where often we draw back and we sit down and we settle, and then we go into New Year's where all of a sudden we panic and go, we've got to come up with all this new goals to do in the new year. I reckon if we had on our heart over these next couple of months and leading into next year, we would have talked about it briefly, but really taking ownership of what we're pursuing. We've talked about seeking his face, so let's just make that decision in yourself, or a call to do this, to go deeper in God, to open your word, to pray. And also a word that you alluded to, the story of the two boys, the thought of sacrifice. Everything that we're called to do is to sacrifice something. We're sacrificing our time to watch Netflix by opening his word, or to pray, or we flick off the radio on the car trip because we want to take time to pray, or listen to a podcast or learn or whatever. So I think it's that thought of ownership, but in the context of sacrifice as well, and thinking and planning. What are some of the things that we need to crucify in our own flesh, or put on the back burner to elevate how we're going to seek and pursue God?
Yeah, so good. It's even going like, man, do you have a vision for this summer?
Yes.
For your spiritual journey?
Yeah.
Do you have a vision for this summer for your discipleship? What could God do in this summer that he might not do in other seasons? Yes. You've got more time. Is it about just stacking up the hours on Netflix? Is it stacking up the hours on the beach? Those are all great things, don't get me wrong. But it's like, man, what could God do in my heart this summer? What could God do if I consecrate something in my life, as I have more time to sit, reflect, come before him? What could God do this summer in our lives? What a question. What could God do this summer in my discipleship? It's important, because if we don't approach it, if we become passive towards it, it's where the enemy just comes in. And having done I do far less of the work now. The team does an incredible job. Having done student ministry for nearly 10 years, it's always the summer period where it's like, man, I hope students come back to church next year, but not always the case. It's go back home, go back to something else, get distracted, get confused, maybe be around people who don't follow Jesus, and that they lean towards that now. It's like, man, if we just become intentional about it, God, what do you want to do in my heart in this season? Greater hunger for your word, greater resolve for your church. Let's come into the new year taking responsibility for the momentum of our hearts. And as a result, our church is going to gather again in January, February, March. With such a lean in. Amen? So exciting. Something really to look forward to. And the start of next year is we've got our prayer rhythm in February aligned with many churches across our city. And so that's something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
But we just want to encourage you, as some of the pastors and leaders of the different locations, Palmers North and Fielding, to ask that question, God, what do you want to do in my heart? So
it's good.
It's going to be awesome. Any departing words from yourself, Jayden?
And I just thought of how you made that incredible sacrifice a year or 2 years ago in January. You took the month of January to read through the whole Bible. Why don't you just maybe tell that for 30 seconds to inspire people?
The Shred. Follow Nathan Finocchio on Instagram. He's one of the founders of TheosU, and that's a great point. And he kind of looks at hey, you've got way more time in the summer. We often will read the Bible slowly and devotionally. Nothing wrong with that. But he kind of challenged this approach on, why don't you skim read to get a bird's eye view? I know it might sound like, I won't be very productive, I might not get anything out of it. That was definitely my initial response. But then after doing it, it's like, whoa, you see the themes of God's hand. If you bird's eye view read it in a month. It's hard work. You got to chip away at it. You got to have strategy around it. I put it in the car as well as reading it. But the Shred. Go to Nathan Finocchio's Instagram. If you're not on Instagram, he's got a website. But it's good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Love you guys so much. We're going to split off to our groups now, discuss the year in review. We'll encourage you to take time, reflect, and we'll see you again in 2024.
Nice.
Come on, somebody.
Awesome.
Love you. See you next time.
See ya.